If you want to go ahead and kick us off, we're ready.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and as we celebrate the 100th day of this new administration. When President Biden took the oath of office 100 days ago, he pledged that help was on its way. Now, thanks to our work together to enact the American Rescue Plan, help is here. The American Rescue Plan is delivering shots in arms, money in pockets, people in jobs, children in schools, and so much more here for our district and across the country. The United States has administered more than 215 million vaccines and counting. More than 85 million Americans are fully vaccinated. Half of the adults in the United States have received at least one vaccine. That is astonishing, and that's leading the world in getting our communities inoculated. Half of the adults in the US have received at least one dose. This is including more than 18 million vaccinated here in the state of Texas. The American Rescue Plan also recently sent $6 billion to local community health centers to help them distribute vaccines. That includes 13.4 million of health centers here in my district, in Congressional District 15 in our district, and more than 400 million to support 72 health centers in the state of Texas. So a lot of resources from the Biden administration have come our way. We've invested $130 billion to help schools reopen safely, stay open safely, and make up for lost earnings, and sent $39 billion to states to help keep childcare providers on the job and lower costs for working families. In the 15th District of Texas, we've helped secure over $1 billion for school funding. This is for teachers, kids, administrators, and essential workers to recover from this horrific pandemic that we've been dealt with for the past year, and that we continue to work our way out of. We created nearly 1 million jobs in March. As a CNBC said, job growth boomed in March at its fastest pace since last summer, as stronger economic growth and aggressive vaccination efforts contribute to a surge in hospitality and construction jobs. So we are blowing and going, and I think great things are about to happen and are happening every day. Each one of these numbers represents grandparents hugging their grandchildren for the first time in months, parents going back to work, teachers safely back in the classroom, businesses opening, workers and paychecks in their pocket. Those hardworking men and women here in South Texas and across our country are heroes for this recovery, and I'm proud to uplift one of these stories here today, one of our very own business owner who runs the iconic Cine El Rey here in McAllen, Texas, Bert Guerra. He was my virtual guest to this year's joint address. He's co-owner of Cine El Rey Theater in McAllen, Texas, who many of you know here in our community, and shuttered in order to stop the spread of COVID during this pandemic. He was impacted directly and very hard. The American Rescue Plan, which we passed, included $16 billion to Save Our Stages Act, which was meant to help independent venue owners like Bert recover from this pandemic. And I'll tell you, I give so much credit to Bert because he was on our office from the very beginning, say, hey, businesses like ours are being left out and we're being impacted the worst. And we were able to communicate this to leadership. And eventually this bill came to the floor. Yesterday, President Biden delivered his first address to a joint session of Congress 100 days into his first term. In a typical year, I would invite a guest from Texas to join me sitting in the chamber. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we did it virtually. Hopefully, Bert, you can join me down the road in a real one when we're there all in person and back together again in a complete fashion. COVID-19 safety protocols meant this year's in-person attendance was limited, so we attended from where we were. Thank you very much. And now I want to introduce Bert Guerra to tell you his story and what he's been dealing with through this pandemic and how it's impacted us here in our community. Thank you. Bert, thank you for being with us, and you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Congressman Gonzalez. Yeah, it's been very unique situation for many businesses, but for the entertainment industry, we were the first to close, and we're probably going to be the last to open. And I think COVID made us realize that we're at a point where we'll probably have to adapt our industry also to survive. But of course, that's the human condition. We've always done that, and we're up for the challenge. But as things were starting to open up, we weren't getting any funding because we're very unique the way we have employees. We have a lot of freelancers, a lot of entertainers, a lot of gig workers. And so we weren't able to get the aid we needed based on the guidelines that were first presented. But you had a lot of companies getting aid. And to me, they were all the too big to fail type of companies. And it just seemed like we were just too small to win. So we actually joined an organization called NIVA, National Independence Venue Association, as a part of therapy group. It seems like we would get on Facebook and talk about issues. And I realized the issues I had in McAllen was the same issues New York had, LA had. We all had the same issues. So we advocated for the Save Our Stages. Actually, Save Our Stages was just a hashtag, and it became part of the actual bill. Of course, being located in Texas, in Austin, it is the live music capital of the world. So a lot of venues sought after venues in Texas that say, hey, you need to raise your voice. Ironically, CNL Ray is one of the senior members of NIVA, being one of the older venues and a national landmark. We were put in the forefront to be that voice. So it was a lot of pressure to make sure we contacted, because I don't think everybody wanted to help. They just didn't know we weren't getting help. And I think that was the biggest issue. And so we had to.
I think you're right. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
We had to let you know. And you did carry the ball. The funding was there in December. It just hasn't got to us. So we were able to apply actually Monday. So, and so now we're here.
Right. And we had some issues with the portal that have now been corrected, and it's up and running. So hopefully everybody who has been impacted like you will be able to get on and get resources they need to get going again and get their doors open. And hopefully, I'm very optimistic that this next year, we're just going to expand like never before. Our doors are going to open. Our economy is going to thrive, and it'll be like the Roaring '20s again.
Yeah, what I liked about the president's speech last night was how he took so many great leaders that America had and laid down a foundation for me to feel more secure about our future. First of all, being a uniter like Lincoln was, and carrying the ball over to like FDR and creating these huge programs to get our economy going. I liked the optimism that he had, like JFK, about the future. But the most important thing that I think he said was, we cannot build walls high enough. And I think that's very important to quote Reagan, we're about tearing down walls, not building them. And I think it's very symbolic being located on the border. People really don't understand our area. And I think it's time for the valley, which is not a valley, it's a delta. And all the palm trees that are here are migrated here, they're not natural. We need to be more truthful about our history and take our own version and let people know who we are and what we are, and not be defined by outsiders. I think that's very important. And that was a great message. The rescue plan, that's exactly what he's doing. He's coming to rescue businesses like us. We sacrificed to close to keep people safe. The rescue plan is going to give us an opportunity to keep our future safe. And that's all we want. I think that's the American dream, is give us an opportunity and we'll take care of the rest.
Great, thank you. And thank you for all you do for our community. And you're a real American patriot. You've held the line, and you continue to keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive in our community, and employing people, and just doing everything that it takes to keep a community alive. So we want to thank you for all you do. And I don't know if we have people that wanted to ask. Did we have questions on this coming, Jason?
Yes. Your first question is going to be from Mike Gibson at KIII. Mike, you're now allowed to talk.
All right. Thank you, Congressman, for doing this morning. You have a question. The president so far has either spent or wants to spend a total of $6 trillion. Do we have that money? Where is it going to come from? Will the average everyday taxpayer ever be affected by this in any way?
Yeah, well, we're a community that pays taxes. So obviously everyone is impacted at some point, but we're coming out of, the pandemic of a century, probably the worst living disastrous period in history that any American has ever lived, that shuttered businesses, that closed our schools, divided families, created just, our hospitals were busting at the seams. We've lost more Americans to this virus than we've lost in the last 5 wars. So the investment, I don't consider it an expense. The investment is justified in renewing the economy. And the way, and you got to consider, we're still the largest economy in the world, a $3 trillion a year economy that will be more robust than ever in this next decade. And I think at the end of the day, this is all going to just, we're going to be able to recover from the growth and continued revenues that our economy will produce, and we'll get past it. But without this investment, I think we'll be crippled, and we need to assure that Americans are on their feet, that people have food on the table, a roof over their head, jobs to go to, that our small businesses are thriving, that our kids are back in school in person, getting a first-class education, and that we're competing with the rest of the world. And in order to do that, we have to make this investment. So that's the way I feel about this.
Are we in danger of going broke? You know, a lot of people, maybe on the other side of the aisle, say we can't afford this. We can't continue spending money like this. How much money do we have? What is the danger zone we would get into?
Yeah, that's what I just explained, that we're still the largest economy in the world, and our economy is doing well, and it will be growing tremendously over this next decade as we make our way out of this pandemic. So this is just an investment into after what we've just been through to get us through the next decade. And I think it was the last shot in the arm that the American economy needed to continue to thrive for the next decade and beyond. So this was a pandemic that impacted everyone, regardless of what your demographic is. Everyone, this really created equality when we saw how this pandemic impacted every single human being in our country and around the world. It was a true equalizer in many respects. And I think that we are now making our way out of this, and the investments that are being made by this administration to do it in a fair and just way is going to be very positively impactful.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to move on to Santiago. Santiago, you're now allowed to talk.
Perfect. Congresista, buenos días, ¿cómo le va?
Buenos días, Santiago. Mucho gusto.
Muy bien, tengo una pregunta acerca del comunicado de prensa que envió ayer, creo que fue ayer. ¿Qué piensa pedirle al presidente Biden sobre la expropiación de tierras cerca del Río Grande? Y específicamente, ¿se puede retroceder la decisión del juez de expropiar los terrenos de la familia Cavazos en Mission? También le iba a preguntar si el condado de Hidalgo puede reconstruir los diques a través del distrito de drenaje sin tener que esperar que el gobierno federal tome acción. Yo sé que están esperando que CBP le dé el permiso al cuerpo del ejército de ingenieros. Pero primero que nada, la primera pregunta acerca de que si se puede retroceder la decisión de expropiar los terrenos.
Sí, pues muy fácil. El Departamento de Justicia puede dejar su caso, ¿verdad? Y dejar que el caso termine inmediatamente, porque la política de este gobierno es distinta. Creo que lo que ha sucedido últimamente en ese caso no fue algo que era visto por el presidente, y en la orden ejecutiva que hizo no incluía con una definición precisa casos como ese tipo, casos que ya estaban en el sistema, en la Corte Federal en litigio, y creo que eso es algo que puede corregir, y también creo que el Departamento de Justicia también puede dejar de baja estos casos.
Claro, y también le pregunté acerca que si el condado puede tomar acción. Y
¿Sabes? Sí, creo que sí, pero ojalá y no tengamos que hacer eso el condado, porque son unos gastos que el gobierno federal necesita que hacerlo. Yo he estado en comunicación con la constructora. Parece que ya el gobierno ha estado en comunicación con ellos para llenar esos diques, que no deben de ser, ya sé que dicen que 8 meses y esto y lo otro, pero si los vas a ver, no son tan complicados. Yo creo que en un par de meses se pueden arreglar, y espero que se arreglen antes de que empiece la temporada de huracán.
Perfect. Congressman, if you could just repeat your 2 answers in English, please. The one about
Yes.
the Cavazos family and the levies, yes.
Right. So yes, I do think that the president can help in addressing this Cavazos case. First, he can amend his executive order, and secondly, he can ask the Department of Justice, or the Department of Justice on their own could dismiss that civil case, because it was done for a purpose that is no longer intended under this administration. So I think that they should dismiss the Cavazos case and hopefully amend the presidential order to address all these cases that were in litigation prior to this administration. And on talking about can the Hidalgo County fill in those dikes? You know, I think they probably can, but they shouldn't have to. The federal government should be able to go in there and do it. And I know that they were saying it's an 8-month project, but when I looked at them, it didn't look like an 8-month project to me. It looked like they needed to fill up a bunch of dirt. Some engineers need to go out there and figure out what it needs to get done. And we need to put the pedal to the metal and get it done before hurricane season begins. So I've been talking to the construction company. We've been in touch with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we hope it gets done soon.
Gracias, congresista.
Thank you, Santiago. Next question is from Alyssa Cole at KRGV. Alyssa, you're now allowed to talk.
Hello, Congressman Gonzalez. Just a question for Mr. Guerra. How long was your business closed and when did you apply for that funding again? It sounds like you said on Monday.
We're still closed. So we're a very unique ecosystem. We really can't open unless the venues in New York and LA open. Concerts have not been booked. We're just not sure how the ecosystem of our industry is going to survive. Yes, you're correct. We just applied on the 26th of April. And so we have not heard of the status of our application. But even once that happens, it's not a turnkey situation. We have to wait and see what tours are available. And then we're hoping by October, for sure, 2022, that's our 75th anniversary. And I think it'd be great for the community to come back to one of the most rooted, iconic places in the Rio Grande Valley. And so that's kind of our situation right now. So again, grateful to Congressman Gonzalez for helping us get here.
And just one more question for you, Mr. Guerra. Let's say everything goes according to plan, you get approved for the funding. You were saying you have to figure things out next. If you can go into a little bit more detail about that, what exactly would you all do? Well,
first, there's money that needs to be put aside to get our permits back up to code. Even our fire extinguishers, we need to update them. So that's money there. Our liquor permit has to get updated. We need to stock the bars. We need to put deposits for tours. I mean, it's quite a bit of money just to start organizing again. And of course, just running a business, there's no guarantee. Anybody that's run a business knows that. But we only got 45% of our gross. So we're not really getting 100% chance. We got a 45% chance, but it's a chance that we didn't have before. So, we're not about giving up. There's no doubt we could have just walked away and sold this building and retired, to be honest with you. But we really care about the history of the theater. It's rooted in the valley, which I noted earlier is not a valley. I think it represents the truth of our area. And I think our story needs to be told so we can be proud of what we represent. It is the last frontier of America. It's going to be the greatest exporter of arts and entertainment in the world in the very near future. And I believe that we need to define ourselves that way and be more proud about what we are and not what people want us to be. Sure, you can look at us as a very deprived economic area or maybe least educated, but I guarantee you we have the richest culture. We are an example, I think, of what America is and is going to be. And especially with what's going on in our border regions, I think we need to embrace it and look at the humanitarian effort that's going on and show people this is how you lead and you take care of people. We're Americans take care of people that are not Americans. That's our greatest gift that we have for humanity, and that's what the world's going to remember us for. So I think it's very important. And ironically, this theater represents that. So if we lose this theater to a corporation, our voice is not independent. America is built on independence. And so that's why I like being an independent venue. I like not being funded technically from the city, government, or state, because we have a voice. But once my money and my income depends on those type of entities, I lose that voice. So, we abided by the COVID-19 restrictions. All we want is a fair chance. We did our part, so we appreciate the opportunity, and we're gonna try our best. That's all we can let people know. We're gonna try our best to open up in a safe manner and a successful manner.
Thank you.
All right. Were there any other questions? All right, from Steve Taylor. Steve, you can speak now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Congressman, going back to last night's presentation by the President, what did you think of the emphasis he placed on immigration reform? Do you think it was given a high enough profile? Did he speak about it in long enough? And
Yes.
what do you think the chances are of comprehensive immigration reform?
Right. So you're thinking along the way I thought, Steve. I gave him an A last night, but I do think that he could have said more on immigration reform and pushed more on a plan to deal with the border surge in terms of making, what is his plan of making what investments in those 3 Central American countries? And that's something that I've been in communication with the administration about very heavily, because when people around the country and in communities complain about the surge that we have on our border, I always tell them it's turning into a crisis on our border, but the crisis is really in 3 Central American countries that have failed American policy that we've ignored for decades now, and it's come back to haunt us, and we need to go and address it at the root cause. A lot of the policies that are in place in those 3 Central American countries were pushed by American administrations back in those days and have caused some disastrous results over time, and we need to go back and address them. And others that are brewing in the region to assure that what's happening on our border doesn't happen. The only way people won't migrate to the United States is if they have conditions in their home country that incentivize them to want to stay, and that is improving their economic and educational and living conditions. And I think the United States of America has the capability to make those investments, and I think we'll reap long rewards. And we've done it around the world. We've been in Afghanistan for 20 years, and we've been in all these other places spending trillions of dollars, and we've ignored our backyard. And I think it's time to pay attention.
Thank you.
All right, Congressman, another question from Melissa.
Congressman, yes. I'm sure you're familiar with Governor Abbott's Operation Lone Star on the border, where he has troopers assisting Border Patrol agents in the, if you will, for lack of a better word, apprehending any migrants and detaining them, helping them when they come across the border. The governor is now seeking funding from federal government. What is your response in that? Should the federal government be stepping in, helping any Texas or state entities in regards to this matter?
Yeah. Well, I think the governor, let me tell you, we're all for having the law and order on the border and having a good security. And I think the federal government's done a good job. But I think what the governor needs to do is reimburse our schools these billions of dollars that have been held, of federal funds that he's held. And I think he needs to reimburse our counties and municipalities from CARES Act, billions of dollars of CARES Act money, and give it to those appropriate entities before he starts asking for reimbursements on services that maybe haven't been asked for. With that being said, I think that the federal and state law enforcement authorities should work together in a cohesive way, that like the way they always have and the way they do across the country, and see how they can help each other along the border. But I think the governor's playing politics with this, and we shouldn't allow this.
And sir, if you could say the same in Spanish as well.
Pues lo que pienso que necesita que hacer el gobernador es primero darle los miles de millones de dólares a las escuelas y a los municipios y a los condados que ha detenido de fondos del gobierno federal que nosotros hemos mandado de Washington al estado para que le den a la gente, para que le den a las escuelas, a las pequeñas ciudades y a los condados cuando está pidiendo reembolso para él mismo en servicios que no se han pedido. Ahora, diciendo eso, pienso que es importante que el servicio policíaco del estado y el gobierno federal trabajen juntos como siempre lo han hecho y como lo hacen en la costa del país. Y si hay algo que se le debe de un lado a otro, entonces se puede hacer, pero no debemos de jugar la política en temas tan graves como este.
Do you believe the governor will be successful in getting that funding?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know if it's legitimate and he spent it, he wouldn't have otherwise spent it, and we needed the services and you could prove it up. I think he should get it, but it sounds very political to me, to be honest.
Thank you.
Santiago, did you have another question?
Sí, congresista, una pregunta más. Yo sé que cuando nos visitó acá en el Valle mencionó de una idea, pero por favor para clarificarlo, para compararlo con el plan de la vicepresidenta Harris, con lo que usted mencionó acá cuando visitó el Parque Ansaldúas, mencionó unos centros o un centro en la frontera con Guatemala y México para que fuera más fácil para los migrantes solicitar asilo y ver si aplican, si pueden recibir asilo. Pero a la misma vez esa semana la vicepresidenta Harris ha estado en conversaciones con el presidente de Guatemala y también se mencionó que bueno, de Estados Unidos, los agentes aduaneros, corrígeme por favor si no estoy diciendo lo correcto, va a entrenar a autoridades migratorias en Guatemala para aclarar, porque son muchas cosas que se desarrollan todos los días. ¿Qué diferencia es con lo que usted mencionó? ¿Eso es una propuesta de ley? Y lo que está haciendo Harris es de su parte del gobierno de Biden para entrenar las autoridades de Guatemala. Si pudiera como aclarar eso también, por favor. Gracias.
Sí,
Y también
pues
en inglés. En inglés. Ujú.
gracias. Creo que han estado escuchando mis propuestas y las quieren tratar de hacer de su manera, que no son exactamente como yo sugiero, pero lo bueno es que busquemos un sistema donde podemos procesar a migrantes en la frontera de México y Guatemala, porque esos migrantes están pagando a los carteles un promedio de $6,000 por persona. Este año hemos calculado, miembros del Congreso, que se han gastado más de $1 billón para que lleguen a la frontera del sur de este país. Y si van a llegar legítimamente, deben de poder llegar con un asilo o con una carta de riesgo. Y tratar de quitarle la presión a la frontera del sur de este país. Eso es lo importante. Y espero, tengo confianza que la vicepresidenta Harris va a poder figurar un plan y un sistema que sea más eficiente y que funcione.
Y
Y
también
que
en
sea
inglés.
digno, y que sea
Ajá,
digno, y que de una manera humanitaria.
perfecto. Y también en inglés, congresista.
Yeah. Yes. I think my proposal is kind of what the administration has taken and then kind of tweaked it to things that they think that they like. But like one of the things is I was thinking of American Made, American Manned there with Guatemala, including Guatemalan forces. Now, I think they said they're going to train Guatemalans to do it. Either way, I think it's a good idea. It's a system that will be functional, that works, that's dealt with in a humanitarian and dignified way. And if people qualify for asylum or even at credible risk, which they're released into the United States, at that point they can fly in, because otherwise, you have this massive, the cartel element where they're paying billions of dollars to get to our southern border, and many of the kids are at risk, women are abused, and we need to figure out a better way to treat these people and to deal with this in a orderly fashion.
Perfect. And Congressman, just for clarity, the proposal you mentioned when you came down here, do you have a timeline as to when that's going to be debated on, voted on, just so we kind of get an idea?
Well, let me tell you, I'm finishing my proposal. I'm like doing the final tweaks on, bringing it down to what I think it'll cost, locations that I think would be appropriate, what's caused the surges in different countries for different reasons, a real kind of a holistic approach to it. And I plan to send this to the White House probably in the next week or two, and let them use that as kind of a plan that they can compare to what they've been talking about and see what works. And I hope to continue to engage them and talk to them about what we know on the border. I think people on the members of Congress on the border are unique in many ways, because we've been dealing with migration, most of us, for all our life in one way or another. And we don't need people from the Midwest or the East Coast or West Coast to come and tell us how it's done down here. But I think we have a lot of great ideas if we're given an opportunity to express them and work with them. I'm still talking to the administrations of the three countries of Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras to see what we could do to improve conditions there and just deal with this process. Hopefully we get past it soon.
Perfect. I'll stay tuned. Thank you, Congressman. Gracias.
Gracias.
All right. Are there any more questions? Okay, Mike, one more from Mike Gibson. Go ahead.
Okay, Congressman Gonzalez, just one final question. What about some of the things that the president addressed as far as the child care and the minimum wage going up to maybe $15? Those are pretty big, important topics and items that a
Right.
lot of people are interested in.
Let me tell you with a very tough issue is obviously the $15 minimum wage. And what I've addressed is what I tell folks, regardless if $15 is too much, $7.25 is not enough. And we need to come to terms with that and maybe have a regional plan. And we've never in the history of a minimum wage increases doubled the minimum wage. But I think it's a starting point to negotiate. But clearly I talked to my business community here in South Texas, and most of them say, well, you know, at least even $10, everybody agrees that at least $10 is fair. So now we're talking to our business community and we're talking to the worker and we're trying to figure out what's the right equilibrium that keeps things going and that's fair. $7.25 is not enough to put a roof over your head and food on the table. And $15 might be too much for some rural communities to keep their doors open. Businesses in rural communities. So we need to find that equilibrium, and obviously that's how the president feels. You know, in New York City, $15 may not be enough, and in a small town in Texas, $15 may be too much for a small business to keep employees employees employed and doors open. So we need to continue negotiating the finality of that. But I think that's his general idea, that clearly a wage increase is in the plans. And on childcare, I think that women who are working and are dealing with childcare realize the tremendous burden and expense it is on American families. And he's trying to figure out how we can address that as well.
And do you think it'll have to go through reconciliation to get a lot of these ideas passed through Congress?
We'll see, right? We'll see if we can get bipartisan support. I think a lot of these ideas are American ideas that are impacting Americans across the board, including in red and blue areas. And I think if we have support from both sides of the aisle, it would be much better than to try to do it in reconciliation.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for your questions and for tuning in today.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, Bert. We'll see you soon. Good luck. Let us know how we can help you.
All right, appreciate that.
As you're going through the process.
Okay, bye.
All right, thanks.